Hey guys, I've got a game now that's been submitted by a YouTube follower called Sean, who says, I've previously commented before on your chat that my constant issue is converting a solid opening to a win in the middle game. So often I feel I have the upper hand and then somehow get into a losing ending. So he's submitted a game. I haven't looked at it at all. I know he's trying the London system as white because I did a video on that recently. So what we'll do is let's walk through the game from the start. I know that Sean's playing with the white pieces. I don't know what his rating is. I don't know what his opponent's rating is. We'll just treat it as chess on site. Okay, so d4, d5, and then bishop to f4. Okay, so the start of the London system. Knight to f6 comes out, knight to f3. I think quite a lot of people like to finish building the pyramid before bringing the knights out, but this is fine. Yep, so the two opposing knights have come out. e3, good. Bishop comes down to pin the knight. I mean, this is okay. You don't have to respond to this necessarily because the queen is there in defense, but it does mean the knight cannot move. If to interpose the bishop would allow the knight to move, but the bishop generally wants to come to this square in the London. So, okay, the other knight comes across. That's now defending this knight. It's still, of course, pinned. The difference is this knight is defending it twice. So it's now defended actually 3 times. It's defended by pawn as well. But the knight itself is still pinned. h6 is played. Don't really understand that move. I don't think, if he's preparing g5, the bishop can just drop back. The bishop's very happy there, just as strong there. And now white looks to kick the invading bishop away. I think that's reasonable. This is a decent bishop. It's the only decent bishop right now. The dark squared bishop is blocked in. Do you want an exchange of bishops at this point? It wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. So if bishop takes, I might consider queen takes. I might even consider g takes, actually, to open up this file and make it hard for black to castle kingside. So bishop does take, and let's see what white does. Okay, white recaptures with the knight. So that's not bad. So basically, we've traded one knight on f3 for the other knight, and that's one good thing about knights, is that they do have this pattern of where they can go to. So each knight can jump to the other knight's square in a couple of goes. Okay, and now indeed g5 comes. I think this is poor. This is one of those attacks that just isn't an attack. At this time, you could drop this bishop back to h2. You could drop it back to g3, and it's also pretty much sealed the fact that black isn't going to be castling kingside. I should not expect. Okay, bishop comes back to h2. That's great. It's very safe in there, and it's like a little sniper's nest in there when you get a bishop right in the corner, and you can almost rely on your opponent to forget that the bishop's there and do some kind of horrendous blunder. Okay, black now moves his bishop to g7, which is kind of fair enough. I mean, I'd still have been thinking about moving the e-pawn at some point, because that can release both the bishop and the queen. But this is an idea, although normally you would want the pawns tighter in around the bishop, but hey. Okay, bishop to d3, normal London move. So what you need to think about in the London system is that you've got 2 bishops, right? The dark squared bishop is the one that is outside of your pawn structure, and that's kind of your attack piece in a way. Quite often gets traded off with black's dark square bishop, but this piece, quite often doesn't survive that long in the game, but is an important piece. Whereas this piece, this bishop likes to sit there and is kind of waiting for a later point in the game. So it tends to be more about activity for the dark squared bishop at first, and the light squared can come into its own later. Okay, so now we have e6 and c3 completing the triangle, the pyramid, and black does castle kingside, which is a surprise. So for me at this point, okay, we are now just about in the middle game. Okay, white hasn't castled yet. So what we need to be thinking about is attacking opportunities, and the thing that I see right now is, let's say, bishop back, queen in front of the bishop, and we'd be looking at a sudden checkmate there on h7. All you have to do is remove the knight, and that's not terribly difficult to do. So an idea at this point, I would be stopping, I would be thinking, I'd think maybe this, then I'd probably castle long, so that I've got 2 rooks available, and then I would certainly be thinking about pushing the h-pawn up. These pawns are not strong, they are weak. This pawn's defended only by the bishop, right? The king is not defending it. This pawn is defended only by that pawn. So yeah, they're not great. They're really vulnerable. So you might think about maybe a g4 to stop this pawn coming forwards, and then h4 means that this pawn is coming off the board. Whether if it captures, you've got rook takes. Okay, so let's say we play like that. If you capture, then the only way it can recapture is with the h pawn, and that leaves this h file very open. So that's what I'd be thinking about, that kind of configuration, yeah, and then pawn storming up that side. So let's carry on with the game. Knight comes into e5. E5 is generally a very, very good square for a knight in general, and in the London system in particular. You very often want to be looking for that square. Of course, this is the knight that we want to get rid of. This knight here on c6 is not very material from white's perspective, and we have an exchange of knights, so I would now expect probably bishop to recapture. Okay, recaptures with the pawn. That's interesting because it's going to force this knight to move now. Okay, but if you think about it, I would have preferred to rearrange my queen and my bishop onto this diagonal, right, and then go in for this. Okay, so this might be a way of shifting this knight. So just imagine if your bishop was here and your queen was here, then you put your knight onto e5, and if black captures, that would be a serious mistake, because you recapture with a pawn, and then this f6 knight has got to go somewhere or be captured, right? So you're going to win the knight. So you either win the knight or you checkmate black. Okay, so it's more a case of thinking, okay, you've got ideas, you've got possibilities. The important thing is how do you arrange those? How do you set up a winning attack? Because this could be an attack. So we've got knight takes, pawn takes, knight comes in. All right, fair enough. Bishop takes, pawn takes, queen comes out of the way. So think about this as well. You know, we had a bishop and a queen. If we had a bishop and a queen here, it would be a very different story. So now with the queen out the way, white isn't going to be able to castle queenside, because it'd have to pass through check, and you're not allowed to pass through check. My other concern is that the queen on this square, I can see an argument for the queen there, because now if you expect the h-pawn to come up, if this pawn captures, then this bishop is going to find itself in an absolute pin, which is no bad thing. So, okay, f5 is played, hitting the queen. Does also open itself to capture en passant, which is definitely something I would be considering at this point. And good, well done. So white does that, captures en passant. Black's got 3 options to recapture, but we have now opened up the f file at least. So the key thing is that there's a potential defender of the g pawn that's now out of the picture. That's what matters. Okay, recaptures with the bishop. I don't think that's the best move, and neither does the computer, because it's just blocking the semi-open file from the rook. Right? If, for example, queen had taken, got queen on there, you've got an immediate threat of queen takes f2, which would probably force white to castle. Okay, so bishop takes, I think, is the worst of the three options. Queen takes the spare pawn, good. King pushes forward to defend h6. Remember we said early on, these pawns being a little bit extended far forward are weaknesses, and they absolutely are weaknesses. So at this point I definitely think about pushing Harry the h-pawn, try and get rid of this, open up that king. You know, I agree that this is a strong position for white. Another thought might be to castle now and solidify your position. Black's king is starting to look very open. Black's pawns are poor. He's got these slightly advanced ones on the king side, not good. He's got an isolated pawn here, not good. And no movement on the queen side. So there's no real threat of pawns charging through there. So at this point you might want to consolidate your position and throw in the castle. Okay, queen comes in, grabs another pawn, fair enough. Rook comes across, no great risk. What you do have to... Yeah, I think, you know, once the queen moves, you've got now the king and queen on that e-file now. So you do want to be castling soon. Queen dodges out of the way, c6 is played. The computer says this is very poor and white is in a completely commanding position now. One thought is maybe rook to d1, which would force the queen off of the open file. You want to occupy the open files where you can. There's one completely open file on the board and it's D, right? So I think rook to d1 would have been good, then followed by castling. So let's see. Why does the computer say that this is completely overwhelmingly winning for white? Another thought could be f4 to attack this pawn as well. I'm not seeing an immediate tactic. Good, castles is good, nice to see. Queen comes out. Now exchanging queens at this point would be no bad thing, because it would leave black with another isolated pawn on the d file. White decides against, and now black queen moves across with having a poke at the b2 file. Rook moves across to b1 to defend, fair enough. And now black grabs the open file. Right? White had the opportunity to do it, black's done it. Okay, h4 is great because this pawn, the g pawn, is completely pinned, cannot capture, it's in an absolute pin. Rook comes in now. Okay, so there's an attack brewing against b2. Now, at this point in time, I might be tempted to... There's a possibility of a capture, but then pawn captures, and I don't think black's looking too bad. Another idea might be h5, and maybe think about... Ooh, that's quite nice as well. h5 and then a check there would force the king onto the back rank, because this square would be unavailable. And in fact the king would... Oh no, can't go there because it's covered by the rook. Yeah, see, to me, I think b2 is not a serious problem right now. It's almost like you can lose these pawns. They're quite immaterial. What you're looking for is a commanding attack. So maybe something like h5, allow the rook to take b2. The queen can't take it. You can't lose the queen, and then you could come in with a queen, which would force the king to here, because otherwise the queen would take the rook. And then you just need to finish off. So yeah, it'd be a case of bring the rook across maybe to d1 and to try and finish the job that way. That's an idea. Let's see how the game pans out. Okay, so we've got captures on g5, which I don't think is particularly overwhelming. You've got to think, how am I going to finish this off? f4 right now could be definitely a possibility. This pawn is defended twice. Okay, queen comes in. That's not really a threat. Okay, oh, actually, it's threatening. It's threatening the rook on an e8. Okay, rook moves. Queen comes back, and now rook captures b2. So what I would certainly be thinking now is rook to d1 and ideas of coming in for the king. White is still in an overwhelming position. The exchange of rooks I don't think really favours white at this point, and the computer agrees with that. Yeah, you need to be thinking kill, kill, kill now at this point. Need the killer instinct to kick in. So what would I be doing here? The queen has come off of the G file in line with the king, so this pawn isn't pinned anymore. And also the queen doesn't have options down this diagonal either. Yeah, I think I'd have to be coming in with the queen, but also maybe you're bringing the rook into the game. It's a queen and a rook can be a winning combination. Right? This bishop right now is not part of any attack. The queen is actually part of no attack. The rook is part of no attack. So there's our attack is kind of fizzled out at this point in time. So I wouldn't worry about these pawns. I'd try and think of getting in for the win. So maybe like rook to d1 now, and if possible maybe queen up there and then rook to d7 would make life very, very uncomfortable for black. And you want to think about moving this bishop in at some point as well. So let's see what happens. Okay, queen to d1, and the computer has now gone from 2.5 in front for white to equal. It's saying this is now a drawn position. Rook comes across, you can't capture the rook. Queen comes back, but comes back onto the G file, which is a good thing. So now I look f4, good, but actually now the computer is favouring black at this point. Okay, so the queen comes in, grabs the pawn that is now undefended because the f-pawn's moved. King has to move. Rook comes in, now preventing f takes g because the pawn's pinned on the queen. Okay, that's not a bad move. The computer doesn't like it, but this could win the rook. Why doesn't the computer like that move? Okay, so I guess we've got maybe queen to h3 would force the exchange of queens. Oh no, it wouldn't. It would just lose the queen. Yeah, I don't see that. Okay, queen moves. Bishop grabs rook. Okay, so now the computer still favours... Yes, indeed. Oh, good. That was a decent move by black. Okay, and now the bishop's going to fall. No, first attack the queen. Now, I wouldn't have exchanged queens at that point, right? You exchange queens at this point, and you're in a losing position because of this pawn majority on that side of the board. Okay, so what I would think about there is probably queen to d7 check, and then see if you can get your queen. You see it. So tactically, what I would be thinking about at this point is I want to check the king, I want to harass the king, and I want to get the king away from the defense of the bishop, right, through checks. And if you can do that, then maybe you've got queen takes bishop with 2 attackers and 1 defender. See, right now there's a risk of bishop takes bishop, or black's bishop takes white's bishop. The exchange here, now what I would definitely be looking at bishop takes a7 now. But no, I mean, that's basically sealed white's fate. Okay, white, if with the bishops off the board, white is in a losing position, or I would even argue a lost position. So the king's going to take, and now white's only hope is to capture this pawn and then to try and shepherd that pawn to safety, or to convert on g8 before this pawn can get there, and that's going to be a tall order. Okay. Oh, pushed. Okay, now this is now completely lost because this king is in a good position. There's no way of stopping that pawn coming through. So yeah, and resignation at that point. So there you go. That's my analysis. I've never seen this game before in my life. I agree, white. You did a great job, mate. Got yourself in a very good position and stuffed it. So I don't know, you need to be developing the killer instinct, but also, you know, A, come up with a plan, how am I going to win this game? What needs to happen for me to win this game? Okay, and you might have to change your plan 20 times during a game. That's fine. That happens all the time. First, come up with the plan. Second, think, what do I have to put in place? How do I build up to this attack? Right. A lot of people at beginner level think about attacks as 1 or 2 moves, and you like to think, oh, grandmasters, really, really good players, think 5 or 6 moves in advance. You can think 5 or 6 moves in advance. You are allowed to do that. But even if you're not thinking, okay, if I play this, then I know what my opponent's going to do, then I do that, then I know what my opponent's going to do. Now, grandmasters often do think to that kind of depth that they actually figure out the best response, the best response, the best response, and computers are even stronger at doing that. But at least you can say, okay, look, in general ideas. So let's go back to this situation at this point, okay? So for me, this move was probably premature, okay? So what you need to be thinking about is aligning your pieces so that when it's like building, getting your army ready. If you're gonna attack with your army, you don't do it while the supply trucks are still 50 miles away and haven't delivered your ammunition, okay? What you want to do is, like, let's just work it through, okay? And let's say queen comes to there, for sake of argument, queen here. I'm just playing random moves. And now, like we said, if knight comes in, this would be a blunder, okay? And then captures, because you've got a threat lined up. So it's about building up the possibility and the threats of dangerous action, right? So now this knight is lost. This knight can't move. This knight goes here, and that's mate in 1, okay? So the knight can't move. So black would be forced to do something else, like that. Lose the knight. Bishop takes. Oh no. Checkmate. Hang on, that won't work. Queen takes. Oh no, checkmate. As soon as that knight's gone, there's a mating threat. So, all I did here was different. Was instead of that, retreat the bishop, put the queen there, and then the knight. Okay? That's it. And I had a winning position. And the reason I had a winning position is because I was aligning my pieces in a threatening way against black's king. And I find that the games that I win tend to be the games where I have positioned my pieces in the most aggressive and threatening ways, so that I've got my opponent walking on eggshells because they almost can't do anything. They're falling over themselves. So I hope that's been useful for you. I play it through a couple of times, and good luck. But decent London system game, just let down by maybe the lack of a plan. See you later.